welcome to Wild Connections. This is a broadcast as part of Peat-Fest South-West, which is a special time that we've set aside to engage to discuss engaging the hearts and minds of young people, connecting them to wild places, particularly peatlands. So Peat-Fest South-West is a celebration and a festival of peatlands across the South-West region, which is encouraging curiosity and love for the peatland landscapes. And as rich carbon landscapes, these healthy peatlands have a strong role in relation to climate change and with such an amazing ecology that supports all of life. So there's a wide collection of organisations involved in Peat-Fest South-West, and we've all had a bit of funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund that's enabled this festival, so thanks to them. I'm part of the Art and Energy Collective, and we're managing Peat-Fest, the Peat Festival. We've got particular partners that have a strong relationship with young people that are working with all of us to gain the better connection with them, and they include RE-PEAT, who are going to present today, and they also include Shallowford Farm. We're going to be working with them as well. So today, hopefully, you've got a treat. You have people with all sorts of experiences and workplaces in relation to engaging young people. And I'm hoping that by the end of this session, you're going to feel inspired, more inspired. You will have some new ideas, and you'll have a new set of peers potentially to share your love of the work and exciting, maybe even set up some new projects. You never know. Peat-Fest.
I'm not sure I understand.
The Peat Festival is will include some other broadcasts like this. So this is the first one. There's going to be 3 or 4. There are podcasts. We've got the first one live. You can hear that. There have been plenty of events and workshops. There's more to come. It's going to finish with a party and a publication and the South-West's own manifesto with young people's voices. So keep having a look at what we're doing, and I'm hoping that you'll continue to be interested in progress down here in the South-West. But welcome everyone from wherever you come from. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Kat now, who's going to chair and maintain our time as we talk and present. Kat, over to you.
Welcome everyone. Thank you very much, Naomi. Just bear with us. We've still got some people coming in through the lobby, so we're just trying to let everyone in. And before we begin, please we've had so much interest in the session. It's lovely to welcome you all from all sorts of different organisations and from all over the South-West and further afield. Please keep your camera off and your mic off just to allow sort of smooth presentations from all of our speakers. We're going to do the presentations first, and then we'll have questions at the end. Please use the chat function if you want to introduce yourself, say where you're from, say which organisation you work from, and Naomi will be keeping an eye on the chat, and we'll have questions and comments at the end. If you want to use the chat as a bit of a networking place to share your contact details, if you'd like to reach out to anyone or keep in touch after the session, then you're very welcome to as well. So our first presenter is Frankie from RE-PEAT. So I'm going to pass to Frankie. I'm going to just pop you in the spotlight, Frankie, and then I'll pass to you.
Amazing.
There we are. Thank you, Frankie.
So amazing to have so many people here. It's exciting. So hi everyone. My name's Frankie, as already mentioned, and I'm from RE-PEAT. So we are a collective. I think you can go to the next one. Oh, perfect. We are a collective of about 10 to 15 core members from lots of different backgrounds. So we have designers, biologists, social science people, and anthropologists, and more. And next one. We live all over the place, all around Europe. I made this little map of where I think everyone is, although people do keep moving. So take the map with a pinch of salt. But yeah, just to say that we are in lots of different parts of Europe. Next one. So we're a youth-led collective, as already mentioned by Naomi, which essentially means that most of our members are below 35. But it also means that we have a strong youth focus and youth audience. Lots of our work is also centered around young people from primary school to secondary school and young professionals. In my opinion, we didn't set out to be a youth group, but we just so happened to be in our early 20s when we started. And I think that this, the coming from that perspective actually just shaped the way that we went forward. And it's something that we've maintained through the years. So the next one. Why do we exist? Why do we do what we do? Well, at this point, oh, I think someone's unmuted. Anyway, at this point, it feels like a lifetime ago. But at some point, I didn't really know about peatlands, which is crazy. Back in 2020, a few of us that are still part of the collective now were friends in Amsterdam. We went to uni together, and we were quite politically active in the climate and social justice movement. And we ended up going on this civil disobedience camp in Germany in 2019, actually. And as part of the camp, there was this excursion to a peatland, and we just randomly went on it and found out kind of how important this issue is. And we were just kind of came to light how little attention the topic actually got. And I think from this kind of seed, we spoke to people, and it kind of escalated, let's say. So maybe go to the next one. So on this excursion, we learned like this kind of classic carbon story of peatlands are super important. They are the largest terrestrial carbon store. They store twice the amount of carbon as all the forests, and they also have all these other roles. So they clean our water, they protect against flood and fire hazards, and they have these kind of crazy biodiversity, which is like insect-eating plants and these migratory bird species. And they're just, I guess we got hooked on the carbon story, and we stayed for the rest. And maybe go to the next one. So one of the things that we realized like quite early on was that there was a creative challenge involved in this topic. Like it wasn't just like this thing where you can go for a walk in a forest and you can say like, how amazing is this? And it feels like there's an instant sort of understanding of what the value is of that place. What we realize is a lot of people find it hard to engage or hard to connect with this ecosystem. They're often quite far away. They kind of associate them with mosquitoes, and I don't know, they're a little bit more hard to come by. And a lot of the magic is actually underground, where you can't actually see it or experience it. So this needed a bit of creative minds, and it also wasn't just a simple technical issue either. Like if it was just a case of, okay, well, now we know that drainage causes carbon emissions, now let's stop drainage. if it was that simple, then it might have already we wouldn't be here. And our approach that we'd kind of learned through these years of activism was civil disobedience was an approach that we were taking, and we realized that with peatlands this wasn't really going to cut it. You can't just go to a farmer and sort of, I don't know, block their land and tell them, you know, they need to re-wet and that's going to happen. That doesn't work like that. So yeah, essentially what we realized is that we needed to take a different approach, and so we kind of we work at the intersection of art, science, and also community building. Next slide. Yes, so something along the way that we also didn't expect was that the peatlands themselves would influence this approach. So something that we found very beautiful was that the peatlands taught us lots of lessons. So they taught us how to like build up very slowly and steadily, and how, you know, these borders that we normally take for granted are actually like often a little bit more blurred. They showed us the connection between life and death, and how by remembering the past we're also working towards a better future. And so that's why we often say that we work for and through the peatlands. So like we're not only working for the protection of peatlands, but the peatlands are also influencing the way that we approach the topic. Next slide. So yeah, this means that we do a lot of kind of creative, creative, engaging and accessible like workshops and activities. We do skill sharing and knowledge exchange, because this is obviously still quite like a new field. And yeah, we work a lot online, but we're trying to do a lot more on the ground projects, and we try to be as inclusive as possible. So not only stretching across contexts and countries, but also urban and rural, young and old, and inviting people into this topic who wouldn't necessarily see themselves as like nature people. And next slide. To make it a bit more concrete, these are some of the projects that we've been working on for the last couple of years. So first of all, we have Bog Academy, which is a primary school education program, which is all about the senses, and we've been doing that across Ireland and recently the UK as well. And it has two components. So it's an in-class kind of like bog in a box where they learn about it and kind of sense the peatlands, and then they go out on an excursion. And then we have Restoration Academy, which is about creating ecosystem restoration camps for young people, and trying to get this idea of like going camping but also restoring landscapes as a kind of thing that people do, and especially focusing on peatlands. So we did our first restoration camp this year in the Netherlands, which was really fun. We also have Moss Pit, which is a play on obviously mosh pit. So it's kind of like, how do we actually like get up and close and sort of dance with the moss? How do we kind of connect with this strange plant that's also very important? And we have also Peatland Justice, which is connecting the social justice and the ecological justice. So currently we are working on the topic of trade. So essentially the trade of extracted peat that gets used in horticultural industry, and essentially looking at that trade network and figuring out where there's two strands. So first of all, what are the stories, and what is a different way of seeing that trade network from a kind of social justice angle? And the second part is to do with where is a kind of point at which we can engage with this trade network and maybe disrupt it. And so we have like a campaign going on against a a big supermarket chain in the Netherlands that has a, let's say, sells a lot of products that have been grown in peat. And next slide. Oh yeah, hit just a few more. So we also have a little strand of work which is around eating peatland crops. So it's kind of like, how do we sense it through our taste, but also like the culture of eating together. This is a photo of Holly and Fiona from Ardie Bog. Amazing costumes. They are an amazing group in Ireland who we went to go meet this year. And then in the corner there's a candle. We also do projects around the connection between grief and peatlands. So how do we somehow, what are the lessons that peatlands also teach us that help us relate to ecological grief in a different way? Yes. And next slide. I know, okay, this unexpected slide. This is I just wanted to quickly like put this in there. This is an upcoming exhibition that we're running, which is happening in Drenthe in the north of the Netherlands, and I'm going to share some info about that coming up. But I just thought I'd pop that in there. This is a deep map, so it's as I mentioned, like thinking about some of the stories that are happening of people along this trade network, and an exhibition to do with this map. Next slide. Yes, so I wanted to end in terms of projects on Peat-Fest because obviously we're here with the Art and Energy 2.0 Peat-Fest, but also we've been doing Peat-Fest since the beginning. It was actually our first project that we did, and I think, as coming back to this thing of young people, I think for us it was really important to start with this joy, or like start with this kind of opening up of why should we care, and like what are the things that are like very cool and interesting and intriguing, and like how can we come at this topic from so many different angles. And I think Peat-Fest was a really amazing space to do that, and to kind of, I don't know, it wasn't really like against anything, it was just like celebrating peatlands as they are. And yeah, so I think there's definitely space for this kind of celebratory aspect, and these are our like old programs which are cute to see. Next slide. Yeah, and here we are. It's amazing to see it still running, and Art and Energy have been incredible in this year's Peat-Fest, and along with all the other countless organizations that have been part of it. And yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say for now. I wanted to just quickly read out the RE-PEAT manifesto to end on, because there will be a manifesto that will be made in the upcoming months, and this was created quite at the beginning, and I think we've read it out quite a few times, and it's interesting how these kind of poems, manifestos, whatever it is you want to call it, somehow change every time you read it. So anyway, I'll read it, and then we pass on to the next person. So it goes like this. We believe in collaboration, in the moss-like power of connecting. Peatlands embody the potential for worlds to collide, cuts to heal, and walls to be lost in soil. They are the partnership between water and earth, the underworld, the surface, and the sky, to be alive and dead, and the future. They can connect people, creatures, and identities, encourage crucial exchanges, and submerge the trenches. We believe in education, in thinking through ontologies, learning from the bog, not about the bog. We must learn about our earth systems, about our cultural organizations, learn about their interwoven layers of silence and force, learn how to unchain and rewild, and flow across interdisciplinary streams, allowing art, science, history, politics, and culture to interact. We can unlearn oppressive ways of thinking. We believe in a process of reimagining, concocting a new peatland paradigm where both the inner and outer landscapes can evolve. In the moment of suspending belief, in believing, in the possibility of power melting underfoot, reimagining the I, the you, the she, the he, the they, the us. And while we enter the depths of pain and grief, we leave space for the steps of curiosity and coexistence. So I'll leave it like that and pass on to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Frankie. Really interesting to hear more about RE-PEAT. I've really enjoyed working with people from all over Europe. Really exciting to reach out in our work with Peat-Fest with you all. So thank you. I'm going to spotlight you, Frankie. And our next speaker is David, who's based at the wonderful Shallowford farm on Dartmoor. So I'll pass over to you, David. Thank you. Just put you on the spotlight.
Thank you very much. I'll just share my screen. So hello again, everyone. My name is David Onah from Shallowford Farm. I am Program Officer at Shallowford Farm, which basically means I work in different capacities within the trust and with a range of groups as well, usually from start to finish of a group experiencing what we have to offer at Shallowford Farm. So Shallowford Farm is a farm for young people. It's a farm for people, we like to think of it. A farm for people from all walks of life. And particularly with young people, we aim to encourage them in capacity building and confidence building through farming and the outdoors as our main outlets, our main channels. And really about creating awareness about our shared civic responsibilities and environmental responsibilities too. So we are located right in the heart of Dartmoor National Park, and we are just outside of Widdicombe, so we are actually quite accessible. And to give a bit of background about Shallowford Farm, the Shallowford Farm story. So we actually, the story begins with our partner youth club, Providence House, in London in the 60s. And Providence House Youth Club was born out of a chapel. Our founder of blessed memory, Elizabeth Brond, worked at the chapel at the time as an editor, a magazine editor. And the story goes that a group of young, very curious boys wanted to know what was happening in the chapel, so kicked their ball in. And Miss Brond was the lady on the other side who picked up the ball and would not let the boys leave until they engaged, until they sat and listened to the story she had to share with them. And the rest, as they say, is history. A little bit about Miss Brond, our founder. So she was no doubt a visionary to have had this, to have had Shallowford in mind and Providence House. She was regarded by some as, a force of grace in terms of how she conducted herself and just her ability to kind of relate and communicate, with people from all walks of life. She was able to relate with the well-placed to, the everyday people, including the young boys and girls of inner city communities. It's really important to mention as well, while we're talking about the background, her right-hand person, Rosemary Bird, who supported her through a lot of the work at Shallowford Farm, and was really integral in all of the young people that came down from schools and still come down from the youth club, which is still going. Miss Brond had the conviction that the Shallowford Farm project would be a lung for the city. And by that, it came from an understanding, a belief that there was an inherent fault in young people living in, man-made concrete communities, concrete environments, that seemed to be quite divorced. Divorced was the word, quite disconnected from the natural world. And this really spurred on her vision to develop and continue to grow Shallowford Farm. So with the background out the way now, in preparing for this presentation, I tried to think in categories of what, why, and how. So what we've talked about in terms of Shallowford Farm being primarily about supporting young people in capacity building, confidence building, and through farming, through the outdoors, through that, and with the aim of creating awareness around our shared responsibilities of looking after each other, um, which is the community, but also our environmental responsibilities. And then in terms of why, we've talked about the long for the city. And that was the opportunity to connect with self, connect with community, connect with nature. That has not changed. And now I will just share a bit about the how, as far as the methods we employ in making sure we continue to have that kind of impact and, again, reach the hearts and minds of young people. So, without a doubt, our biggest how at Shallowford Farm is learning by doing. And that's what I tried to capture in these pictures. Everything you see and everything that the young people get up to at the farm are all vital to a working farm. They're all critical. Learning by doing is our bread and butter. And we believe that it's the most effective, it's the most efficient way. We encourage the young people to take ownership and through that understand the process, understand themselves as well. Another really critical one for us is the variation, which is still connected to learning by doing, but then is varying the offer, making sure that there's enough to kind of appeal to different kinds of people, different kinds of young people. As is popularly said, different strokes for different folk. We are all different individuals, but and it is in creating that variety, creating that menu, creating that range, that people then are able to say, oh, right, I can see myself in this, I can see myself in that. Similarly, when we try to integrate the elements of well-being, from being in the outdoors, from looking after the land, from understanding the land, from working with the land, then it becomes a no-brainer to definitely vary what we can offer and how flexible we are with that as well. Another very important how for us is striking the balance between the two C's, I like to think of it, which are challenge and comfort. And by that I mean, when the young people have spent a week, with long days, of adventures, of being challenged, of exploring, we find that it goes a long way. It definitely impacts their ability to come back and try again. When resources like where they lay their heads at the end of the day, it's comfortable, it's warm, it feels like home, and that's something really dear to us. So we've been very intentional with that, and we have invested that in our space. So this is our barn accommodation, which sleeps 21 and kind of helps create that balance. And we've also got our farmhouse, which has been very well looked after as well, dates back to 1066. And again, the young people really feel that sense of home and are kind of recharged for each day that they spend at the farm. Another how for us is creating structure and boundaries. And as much as young people might often, kick back to the idea of structure or boundaries, they actually thrive in it, and we all thrive in it. So at Shallowford Farm, we definitely lead with this too. We try to create this. We try to support young people to adopt and to adapt this in their ways of living. So a typical day at Shallowford looks like, you can see, it's an early start, and we feed the animals before we feed ourselves. And again, it's about creating that awareness talked about earlier around our shared responsibilities. And the little mantra is that we look after the land and the land looks after us. And that includes the animals, that includes the plants, that includes all forms of life around us. So by doing that, we are encouraging that, we are creating that understanding. We then have a late morning activity, again, furthering the learning, progressing that learning. And then we have a late afternoon activity before we then do our evening feeding for the animals. Again, the evening feeding comes before our dinner, and hopefully it embeds the concept again of the circle of life, of the circle of us being involved in nature, but also nature being in us. And we usually finish the day with a late evening activity that usually helps with a reflection of everything that's happened in the course of the day. It would be unfair to not touch on the challenges, because there are challenges. It's not always a smooth road. And I think the biggest elephant that we're all familiar with is funding. So being a not-for-profit, being a charity, that is one aspect that we constantly confront, and relentlessly we do overcome, but it is a challenge. And also through partners, including Art and Energy, we are usually able to then manage as far as what we can offer, and where we might need to signpost groups, and we will do that. And ultimately, it's about getting the right people and collaborating with people that share the mindset. Another challenge connected to funding is usually the harder to reach younger people, harder to reach groups who have been so disconnected that we do need to put in a lot more work to get their buy-in, and just to even get them to the farm before even engaging. And funding allows for that. So these are the challenges we often face, but ultimately with a bit of resilience, we're usually able to overcome. And partnership and collaborations, I think, are really practical ways of managing that. What next for Shallowford Farm? Well, first of all, is to continue to strive, to make impact, to reach the hearts and minds of young people, through our amazing partners, some of whom I have put here, and our supporters as well. Also, next year we turn 50, and yes, we will be celebrating that in a big way. We will have a series of events to commemorate that. We will have an open farm event, open welcome, where everyone will be welcome, and we'll have a cycling event from different points on Dartmoor to the farm. We'll have walking events and a host of other events. So yes, that's where we stand. That's where we're going. We hope to continue to partner with the wonderful people, wonderful organizations here displayed, that have been really instrumental and really supportive to the reach and impact that we have had, and that we hope to continue to have. Just to finish, I'd like to share these quotes that resonated with me, and one I came across while preparing for this presentation. So one is from our founder, Elizabeth Braun, again. It's an excerpt from her book, The Young Woman Who Lived in a Shoe. And she talked about stepping out into the unknown and embarking on an entirely new chapter of events. And to that, I have added doing so with courage and conviction, and kind of trusting, even when, the dots may not necessarily connect at the point of starting. And the second one is from a psychotherapist by name Eve Stanway, and it really struck me. As far as the work we do at Shallowford, I kind of felt like I couldn't better say it. And it says, children do not need us to tell them who they are. They need us to walk beside them gently as they begin to find out for themselves. And I think that really captures it in a nutshell. Young people will engage, and they do have their own personalities, they do have their own temperaments, and really we need not tell them what to do. We need just create the environment and be there to support and to encourage, and they will always come around, as far as, again, connecting with themselves, connecting with community, connecting with the land, respecting and looking after the land. And yes, that's it from me. So I hope that has been useful. I hope that inspired you. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, David. Shallowford's such an inspiring place. So I had a lovely visit. My daughter still asks when we can come back. So it's a really lovely place. David can't quite stay till the end. So if you've got questions for David, maybe this time, David, can have a little look at the chat now, and we can always connect you up and pass on contact details. So we'll pass on to our next speaker and say thank you, David. So our next speaker is Karen Price. Karen is a youth worker experienced with outdoor learning, and she's going to talk to us a bit about engaging young people and some of those barriers. I'm going to put you in the spotlight now, Karen, for everyone.
Thanks, Kat. Hopefully you can all hear me. I'd like to apologise for the moment. I'm actually currently sat in my local library and rhyme time has just finished, so there may suddenly be a burst into the wheels on the bus. We don't know at any point. So thank you and welcome everyone. For this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on some of the common barriers and reasons young people may not engage with outdoor projects. And these are based on comments that have been said to me over the years and are still being said to this day. So young people are not interested in the outdoors, so why bother creating activities specifically for them and spending that time, energy and resources on them? If we do create something, I've often heard, well, we've put it on and no one came. And then my favourite, which is still being said, is, but they will draw rude pictures everywhere. For a young person, they see that as well as nothing for us. We can't get there. We think a lot of our venues are in rural and remote locations. And we don't feel welcome. We've already been prejudged before we arrive on site. And all of these add up to a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's no suitable activity, no access and no welcome will mean no attendance. Unfortunately, as the adults, as the practitioners, the deliverers, the site, we then interpret that as no interest. So what can we do about it? There is nothing for us, so we really need to concentrate on age, audience and ability appropriate activities. Traditionally, outdoor focus activities and engagement tends to be child focused rather than youth focused. So you really need to think about suitable activities for young people, and we're talking about teenagers and young adults rather than 6 and 7 year olds. So what's going to engage them? What's going to hook their interest and bring them in the first place? What's going to enable them to develop skills, either technical, life or personal skills, etc.? What's going to keep them within your project? And then what's going to empower them to develop a voice and develop a sense of autonomy and feel they have ownership of the project? Traditionally, activities have also been delivered through a schools and curriculum focused lens, and that makes sense. Often schools are your income generating projects. It's an easy win. You're only really needing to sell to the teacher rather than selling the project to 30 individuals. But what about those not attending school or education, or those who have a negative experience of education? We also need to consider that if we're working with young people outside of the school setting, in their spare time, young people don't want to be school in their spare time, in the same way that we wouldn't want to be worked in our outside of work time. And then I think of how we're measuring the impact and the projects we're doing. Quantity of numbers, which is how we generally measure project success, and often that's for funding purposes. Not always about quality of interaction. Young people are gaining independence, are finding their own identity, and they don't want to be treated as a herd. So it may be smaller numbers, but a deeper impact. So look at how we're going to measure that impact. Looking at ability appropriateness, not all young people are the same, and there's a huge difference between a 14-year-old and a 24-year-old. The same way there's a huge difference between a 4-year-old and a 14-year-old. What they know, what they can do and what appeals to them. Young people are also not yet adults, so are still discovering what they can do and what they can't do. And they're going to have a limited level of skills, knowledge and experience to be able to make decisions and assess risks, etc. So are we setting the bar too low and we're developing projects for children with a much younger children with a lower skill level? Or are we setting the bar too high? And quite often I hear, oh, we've got to 17, 18 and there is nothing for us. We now need to go and join the adult volunteer work party. And that's a huge difference. Young people still aren't quite ready for that either. We also need to look at inclusivity and intersectionality. So young people aren't just young people. They can also be neurodiverse, they can be visually impaired, they could speak English as a second language, they could have a mobility disability, or they could be a young carer, etc. Have we considered those additional barriers that brings to being a young person accessing our projects and our sites? And here it's about looking at what activities we deliver and can they easily be adapted to different needs and abilities. And sometimes that's quite quickly within a session. You may not know of a need from a young person before they arrive. And then finally, this risk awareness and fear of failure. So I think as practitioners and young people, we have worries and concerns of the projects we're delivering, the activities we're delivering. Sometimes they could be out of our comfort zone. So what safety nets can we put into place, whether that's policies and procedures, staff training, CPD for us as practitioners, but also for young people. Young people don't like to fail, and there is a huge fear of failure for them. Yet, is it yet something else they're rubbish at? So looking at, where we set the bar, and so we're providing challenge for young people, because young people do like to be challenged, but we're not setting them up to fail. There is a high chance of success, and if they're not being successful, we can support them through that to look at why that hasn't worked. Access and accessibility, we can't get there. So how do most people reach your current site or location? It's probably by car, or if they're coming as a group, they'll be coming on a coach. Most young people are dependent on the adults in their lives for travel-related decisions, for means and finances. So we need to consider here, is your site reachable by youth-friendly transport means? And that could be foot, bike or bus. And also looking at, are they safe? It may only be a mile down the road or 2 miles down the road, and you can cycle to it quite easily in terms of time, but if that's on a main busy road with lorries thundering past, then it's not going to be safe. How much does it cost to get to you? Public transport can be quite expensive, so can that be subsidised in any way? And how realistic is it? And really think about time and complexity here. So it may be a bus journey away, but the young person may have to walk 10 minutes to get to that bus, and then when they get to the final location, another 10 minutes to your site. Quite often there's changes of public transport and changes of buses, or change between buses and trains. Very rarely are bus stops well signed, so how do people know which bus stop to alight from? And all of those start adding kind of points of failure and weak points in that journey, which build up to make a young person just think, I'm not going to do it, it's too scary, I won't get there. So can we provide travel confidence training? And some organisations like Community Rail Partnerships do this. Can we provide timetables, maps, picture journeys, etc.? If young people can get to a certain location, can we provide a shuttle link to collect them from there? And also a really important one to think about is, can we go to them? Do they have to come to us, or can we deliver outreach projects? And that may be needed to build up that confidence, that trust and that relationship in the first place. So we don't feel welcome, and this is about attitude and acceptance. Young people are often stereotyped and prejudged as criminals waiting to happen. They're aware of this, and it doesn't feel nice. So why should they trust you to come to your site and do potentially risky activities? Unlike a school group, they're unlikely to all arrive together on a coach at 10 o'clock. They will arrive separately and from different start points, so they're going to be arriving at different times. And I found that can be up to an hour from the group leader arriving, because they want to get there early to be prepared to meet their group, and the last young person arriving. So we need to be prepared for that. So we need to think about who is going to meet and greet them and where. Will they receive a warm welcome? What about the latecomers? Will they be able to easily find the group, or will they get, "Oh, you're late, they've started already" comment made to them? I often deliver my first activity within eyesight of either the welcome or the entrance or the car park, so people can find me quite easily. and it just reduces that anxiety a little bit. Who's going to deliver the activities? You may have a highly skilled education team and really confident in delivering certain activities, but 16 is not 6. Is that team comfortable and confident in dealing with maybe some challenging teenage behaviour? Where will you deliver the activities? And I talk a lot about safe spaces, and it's somewhere where young people feel physically and emotionally safe and creating that sense of home. But that's not the same as hidden away where they can't disturb our everyday visitors. Again, that kind of causes that feeling of, well, we're not welcome, we're being pushed to the margins. And I've had that said to me, you can go and use that site because you won't disturb people, or you can go and use that site because it doesn't matter if you damage it. Already it's saying, well, they're going to be trouble. And look at, what are the potential conflicts of interest or flashpoints, and how can these be resolved or reduced? And there is about staff training, awareness raising, and particularly about celebrating the positives and not just focusing on the negatives. I would say the positives by far outweigh the 1 or 2 negatives that will happen, but it's the negatives that get the attention. And then finally, know your audience. Know what appeals to them, what makes them tick, and what makes them want to engage. Ask. But bear in mind that young people have limited life experience, so have limited knowledge. We only know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know. So ask, and ask again, and continue to ask throughout your programme, and you will get some amazing responses, and your projects will flourish and grow. So thank you. If you have any questions, please do get in touch with me, and I'm more than happy to chat through some of your projects with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Really important that we think about and include everyone, and as inclusive as we can be in everything that we do. We're going to pass next to Naomi from Art and Energy, who's going to tell you a little bit more about our approach. And I'll just pop you on the spotlight. Oh, there you are, Naomi. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me just share the screen. Can you see that as an entry point? Yes,
we can. Thank you.
Right. So I've already said I'm part of the Art and Energy Collective, or has. The Art and Energy Collective is a group of artists and makers and all sorts of people with different skills that work together to creatively respond to the climate emergency. And we're particularly interested in the energy systems that come from the sun and through nature, and make the world as it is and a better place. But I'm going to go through a number of different places. I shall move on to the next slide. So the mantra that I've lived by, we are nature, nature is us, is something central to the work that we're doing, and involving young people in that as a starting point to think about the way the world works, their place in the world, making it better, connecting with everything is core to our work. But we have a compass or a framework that when we're starting off designing projects and programs, we want to use this and tick off all these points, make sure they're there, so that we have the greatest chance of success and engagement with as many people as possible. So developing an energy lens, we as Art and Energy look at the world through an energy lens. Peatlands are rich in carbon, high in energy, have been used as a fuel, are totally significant in relation to climate change and the health of all living creatures and humans. And so that's just an example of how we might work. But nurturing our nature connections is obviously key, especially in relation to what we're talking about today. Bringing people together, the risks for a new culture in the future, we see that with climate change and environmental changes ahead, with the oncoming tech changes too, the culture is going to evolve. And so our projects look at that and look to the future, and we're prepared to just leap into the unknown. It's a really important part of our work. And finally, celebrating the journey, celebrating the end of the projects, so important. Celebrating tiny steps that people take, making it fun and making those memories really significant to our work. And then I'm going to cover a few personal reflections on young people, the subject of this presentation really, the values perception gap, case for play, and then I'm going to skim through some of the work that we've done as Art and Energy, and I'll just put up a list of barriers that we've found so far, but Karen's done such a good job on those, I won't dwell on those. So quite often when we're working and we talk about young people, there's general speak about young people like they're a different species, and basically all they are is people who happen to be young, with a massive range of interests and needs and motivations, and just like everybody else. And most of the time I'm feeling they're lucky that they're so young. So the approach that we take with the projects that we do is one that they're young human beings with a range of ways that might get them interested and involved and taking that first step to join in or make change. And the values perception gap, we were at an event in Purbeck a couple of weeks ago where the South-West Peat-Fest was taking part in a bigger discovery event, and I talked to someone and they mentioned this values perception gap, and I have come across it many times, but it was really good to be reminded of it, that when children who are mostly under 10 get involved in environmental activities or creative activities, they're very willing to share that experience and their feelings about it with everybody else. And then when they get older, they tend to hold those feelings and values inside and share them less easily. And the reason is that there's loads of research on it. There's that the young people, when they get to a certain age, make the presumption that nobody else is actually interested. And I think they have found out that more than 86% of youngsters are compassionate and are concerned and interested and passionate about the environment and about the needs of other people. But more than 40% of them actually think that everyone else isn't interested. So in terms of our project design and the activities we put on, there's an awful lot of nurturing to be done of young people, to encourage their activism, to encourage expression of interest. And in fact, David's earlier talking of learning through doing, our talking of learning through making and sharing through making is so important in relation to that nurturing. Then there's finding groups like this image here is of young rangers on Dartmoor, and that group there are doing and they're also supporting each other. They have a common interest, and they're really getting into making a difference, which taking action as a young person helps their mental health. There's, as we know, there's masses in the news about the impact of COVID and other, the wider news on young people's well-being, mental well-being. So all of this is connected, and I thought it was worth raising it as another angle in on understanding young needs and projects. Then I always make the case for play within Art and Energy's work when we're developing new projects, and throughout my working life, I have come across various theories, but the one that was most significant was actually written in the 1970s, the loose parts theory, by Simon Nicholson, where he's saying that the greater the number of loose parts in an environment, the deeper and the richer the play is, and the more engagement is created by the participants. And because play we human beings have evolved with play, they've whether it's cave painting or whether it's ritualistic, or whether it's in making mossy pom-poms, having a dance and an act, all those things are so significant. Those opportunities to play and explore and go into the unknown are so important with our work and for youngsters. Then Sunship Earth was something that I came across in the 1980s, and I suppose I just want to remind people that it's great to look back at what's happened as well as and been invented, as well as to look forward at new ideas. And Sunship Earth was, and most of you may have come across it, but it's the Earth Education Institute that initiated with Steve Van Meter in the 60s, and it's just a way of looking at our ecosystems, looking at the main drivers for their functionality and health and beauty, and playing games about the Earth as a sunship. And I have lovely memories of creating massive, great big leaves on the ground and getting young people to be a leaf and play with pom-poms and make it photosynthesize and create sugar molecules in the middle of a dune system. And those sorts of things are fantastic to explore and play with. Adventure play, formal adventure playgrounds, again, have been places for people and young people to just take that one step further into taking risk and enjoying the adventure and being outdoors. And adventure playgrounds have been developed in cities as well as in rural areas. But one question that I have is there a difference in the way we reach young people in cities as opposed to in rural areas, and how do we make the stronger connections? Right, we move on now to the key mass participation projects that we've been developing and have delivered. This was an award-winning project, Moths to a Flame, and it's a very typical project of Art and Energy in that it's a co-creation. So we're inviting young people and their families and others to join together to make a beautiful artwork of a significant scale made up of many parts. And we take a step back from control and allow and encourage other people to play their part and join in. We're never quite sure how it's going to end. This one involved tens of thousands of people, and it was developed during COVID as a way of taking people's voices to the people in power at COP26 when it was in Glasgow. And we use metaphors, storytelling. We get people to look at nature closely, the science of it, but we combine it with the art of it too. And we work with so many different organisations to help us, as well as youngsters, take those steps and get to involve themselves in the project. One of the things we did with this one, which was a different thing, was starting to use the digital platforms for augmented reality. So for youngsters here, there were ways of joining in through their phones, ways of joining in through taking photographs and filming, as well as making from upcycled materials, as well as writing the messages. There were other things going on, poetry slam, etc. But all of those multiple layers, multiple invitations is important to the way art and energy works. And then moving on quickly to the next multi-layered program of work was How to Bury the Giants, which came out of the previous one. The mosses were there speaking to us in the greenhouses of the Glasgow Botanic Gardens, and mosses are so tiny and yet are there responding to environmental change, to the giant carbon problems of our world. So that this project, you can see here a vast array of different ages and different ways of engaging, from making tiny terrariums to making fleece blankets in a creative restoration of small pockets of bare peat on Dartmoor, to story writing and activity books. Have a look on our website and you'll find all these things explained further. From Bury the Giants came a piece, The Mossy Carpet, and further collaborations that has led to Peat-Fest South-West. So again, while you're working with the community and youngsters, there's a need to allow the projects to grow and flow, and you take risks in, you're never quite sure exactly how it's all going to be at the end. But this project had an additional layer of audio. This one was about encouraging communities to have a voice about their own place. Instead of speaking to power at COP26, this one is about looking to your own place and the small things you do, celebrating those small things, and working towards making your own environment better as your step for climate and the changes ahead. So collaboration is key here, and in the previous one I said the co-creation was key, but those two things were definitely part of the way that art and energy works. And then finally, the barriers. I'm wondering whether there's any of those barriers that Karen didn't speak to, but the art and energy tends to put hope and optimism first and look at gentle and quite quiet ways of making a difference. And but this sometimes means that we are not specifically going to any particular disadvantaged group. And I think that's a whole discussion, a whole nother discussion, is do we look to those that don't get the opportunity to get out into peatlands and encourage that experience and that understanding and future gazing, as it were, and taking steps for the future, or do we try and reach absolutely everyone, because all of us have a carbon footprint which is bigger than perhaps it could be, and there's such a lot of lack of understanding out there, including within ourselves. So I think that's the list anyway, and perhaps we can talk about that a bit more at the end. And that's us. The photographs come from a number of different places. I think another thing about reaching young people and a wide audience is having a team with multiple skills. And if you do that you've got some people more techie minded, some people interested in accessibility, others with a bit more of an economic hat, I think you're more likely to create projects that reach who you want to reach. So on that note, I think I shall stop sharing and we'll go back, and I'll turn myself off, Kat.
Yeah. Thank you, Naomi. I was watching the time. You did well. Thank you. Thank you so much. Whistle stop of art and energy and what we've been doing for the last few years. And we're going to pass to our final speaker now, which is Rachael from RE-PEAT, and sort of brings us nicely back to Peat-Fest South-West and how we've all been linked together, how we've come together today. So I'll pass to you, Rachael. Wonderful. I will just share my... Can we all see the slideshow? I can, thank you, Rachael. Yes, okay, great. So thanks everyone, sorry about that. I am Rachael Milliner. I'm the project coordinator for youth engagement for Peat-Fest South-West, and I work for RE-PEAT. And I'm not going to talk too much about RE-PEAT because Frankie's already done an excellent introduction into who we are. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and do a little bit of a reflection on Peat-Fest South-West and share what we've been getting up to, and then maybe offer some visions for how the group of people here today, what's kind of already happening in the chat, could maybe think about education and connection moving forward from the learnings that we've had at Peat-Fest. So my background in education actually comes from skills delivery in the natural building world. I trained as an architect and an engineer, and then got really fascinated by landscape scale recovery and this kind of connection between the urban and rural. And I was seeing all of these like really horrendously damaging social and ecological practices in both social housing, but also landscape design, and just felt that I was a tool in the system rather than kind of making change once you're at that kind of implementation scale, and really saw that actually the way that we can kind of intervene is to get in earlier on, and really like it's about education and collectively changing the way that we think about these systems. And I'm sure everyone here would agree that education and nature connection with young folk isn't just about getting kids outdoors. It's about reconnecting kids with our land in often ways that we've lost or don't have access to. And particularly, I'm interested in how connecting with nature can be a first step towards the possibility of craft skills, local economies that both tend for and are in symbiosis with their landscapes. It's about challenging this idea that nature spaces aren't places for humans to go, that they must be protected from us, rather than these being ecosystems that we have capacity to care for and be part of. Part of this story of being in nature and enjoying it, but it's also about heritage and natural materials and climate resilient landscapes. So Peat-Fest South-West has this amazing collection of collaborators, which it has been both at points chaos, but also such a privilege to collaborate with across the 5 sites, which has been Bodmin Moor, Dartmoor, Exmoor, the Avalon Marshes, and Dorset at Upton Heath. RE-PEAT has been running 10 workshops, 2 in each location, and there's also been events.
I'll go into a bit more about what we've done in them later. But I think particularly what's been really interesting about Peat-Fest South-West is this real like regional approach that we've been able to have, where we've been able to go from site to site and think about these what are already quite large landscapes connecting to the landscape next to it. And me and Frankie were talking the other day about one of the amazing things about peatland is it, you know, you maybe are looking at this like little piece of moss in front of you, but because we're thinking about climate resilience on kind of, okay, so if there's peatland up here, then it means that when the rain comes, that your village down there at the edge of the moor is less likely to get flooded. It allows kids to think at a scale that actually like the endpoint is quite accessible in a way that kind of, I think Frankie earlier said, you know, you walk through a forest and you can see the beauty of it, but there's something about having to go on that slightly windier journey that actually is like really exciting. So what we've been trying to achieve is thinking about new ways of connecting to the land for young folk in the Southwest. And particularly from RE-PEAT, we're thinking about how to create space that doesn't maybe normally exist in nature connection. Those bits that are kind of like quite hard to get funding for, or yeah, like space for kids to just like really think creatively at this intersection, and like thinking about the interconnectivity across generation. And I think that that's been both successful and scope for more, I would definitely say. And so we've been running something in our workshops called Peat Pen Pals, which is where we encourage the young people to write letters to the next workshop that's happening, where they talk about the things that they've learned in the day, things that they've found, things that they thought were exciting, things that they didn't know. And again, this is that kind of landscape, regional scale thinking of like, we're here looking at this bit of peat in front of us, but 3 weeks ago on Bodmin, there were some other kids looking at a different bit of peat, and there was this like really amazing moment where we had one child that was reading a letter where they were being told about learning about the Tormentil flower, and then they kind of looked down next to them and they were like, wait, that's that flower that's right next to me. And that these kind of moments of connection have been really gorgeous, and particularly when we were with the youth rangers on Dartmoor a couple of weeks ago, which these quotes are from, the feedback that we had from the Southwest Peatland Partnership stewards was that often they find that it's actually really difficult to get words from these kids, and they're just kind of like there for the action and the activity, and they do these like amazing like full-on restoration days and kind of go out, but often, yeah, this kind of, but being able to take them away in small groups and give them this space to kind of engage and feedback in a different way brought this whole different side out of them. And I'm just going to read the top one. What I love about Dartmoor is that I can just sit here, I can go out on a tour and I could not, and I wouldn't be found. It's just utmost peace. And for someone who gets in their head in a spin and they're thinking of ever so much, you can just come here and the wind can just quieten your brain down. It's absolutely amazing. Just this, well, it's not still life because it's always moving. It's still here. And looking out onto these views, it's absolutely fascinating to realize how big your world is and you haven't actually explored it yet. And these are all kind of, so we had to do these actually as audio recordings because the wind was so bad we couldn't write it down. So this is just kind of kids off the cuff, just getting really excited about being outside. And yeah, that was just really precious. And I think the importance of having these additional spaces to be reflective and creative and to do something a little different can't really be understated when we think about when we're trying to build these lasting connections, both for young folk and for ourselves and our organizations. So the methodologies that we've been using in Peat-Fest has been really varied. We've written folk songs, we've got a theatre workshop coming up at Shallowford, we've been playing games, creative writing, storytelling, mosaic landscape collaging, and the Peat Pen Pals. And there isn't really one workshop that we've ran throughout that has been the same as another, and we've tried to tailor each session to place. And I think that the success of this is a really fantastic range of stories, and these will be collated into a manifesto as part of the Peat-Fest South-West delivery that is going to be able to champion the voices of young people thinking about how they want to relate to peatland, and so that we in our organisations thinking about what does it mean to do peatland restoration and connect with peatland or wetland across the region. Now we're really going to be able to listen to them and hopefully champion what they want. And then this is just a really gorgeous song that actually, I say it was a song, it was actually a rap from Upton Heath called I Went to the Heath Today, which I'm not going to rap for us right now because this is being recorded, but you can all read it and it's very lovely. So I think this is just a collection of lovely images from across Peat-Fest. So, and I believe Ian is actually on the call with us today. But in the top left, we have this image from, we went to Park Pit on Bodmin, which is an old clay china mine. And some of the local archaeologists came and like all had these like amazing pictures and history of what was happening there. And there was someone there who kind of, his dad used to cut the peat that now the South-West Peatland Partnership are kind of repairing that damage. And it's like knowing this heritage and having this connection and introducing young people to it is how we can really think about what we want to do in the future. This is, so I've been driving around on my bike, and this is this amazing rainbow that we had as we were kind of driving back out across Bodmin, and then yeah, pictures from Dartmoor, and yes, some really great hedgehog poo, which I just thought was adorable, from Dorset. But I think like when we've got young folk excited about being outdoors, like what I'm really interested in is what are the options for them? So what are the skills or career pathways that can support them to continue connecting to nature? Because, and it can feel sometimes slightly reductive to say that. And I know I almost want to be able to just sit here and be like, this is amazing and it's great just to get kids outdoors. But the reality is we do need to be providing them ways to continue to do that. And kind of David's quote earlier about walking alongside them and like listening to what they want. But also if there's nowhere for them to go, we need to kind of like think about that. So maybe this is an invitation, like all of you in the call today, or like anyone who's been involved, of like, how could we collectively think about craft skills or wetland restoration, or what are these roles? And I think like as RE-PEAT are really interested in thinking about how we could be supportive in the region with different groups, thinking about kind of building these things forward. And I just think that it's like, so I remember running a workshop just after COVID of taking some kids out into their local park, and they were redesigning the space, and they'd all just forgotten how to do things with their hands. They didn't know how to like fold cardboard. They were like, oh, well, we haven't done this in years. And the teachers were kind of saying like, oh yeah, well, they've just lost these things because they were just on iPads for 3 years during COVID. And it's just like, so quickly we can lose these things. And I just like really invite us today to think about, if we can lose things that quickly, we can also gain them so quickly. And so yeah, I would like to leave us at the end of the day of like, what do we want to gain as a region? And from these learnings from Peat-Fest South-West, how can we support our young folks to do that? And yeah, just want to thank everyone for their really wonderful presentations today. It's been great.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Another really interesting reflection on all the brilliant things going on in the regions. Grace has gone, but I wonder what she'd think about hedgehog poo being the highlight from Dorset. We'll have to tell her that one. So I'll take you out the spotlight, Rachel, and we are going to just have time. We've only got a few minutes. Appreciate we're nearly at the time we said we'd finish. So Naomi, maybe if we come back together, and I know you've been in the chat and there's been lots going on. I've had lots of pings from the chat. Maybe there's a couple of questions we can just talk through, Naomi, and see if our presenters have got anything they'd like to say.
Well, most of the chat has been about people sharing what they do and wanting to connect up. So I think if we can work out a way of offering that networking, connecting up as much as we can within the data sharing stuff that goes on, that would be very useful. If anyone has particular questions, then please put them in the chat. But there's something that I've been thinking of while people have been talking, which is about how we measure that change that we're encouraging within people, within young people, or you know, sort of how do we notice that we've reached people's hearts, young person's hearts and minds. So I don't know whether anybody wants to answer that one. Do you think it's just in the, I say just, but in the Peat Pal letters that there's the evidence, or what would you suggest is a way that we know we're having some sort of impact?
that a question for me, Naomi?
Doesn't matter. Sorry, I've just sort of said that. Yes, go on. You answer, Rachel. See whether that leads to a bit of a chat.
Well, I think it's just being with people and being outside and just the chats. Like the Peat Pen Pals is maybe sort of a concrete way that we will take to the Heritage Lottery and can turn into this manifesto. But I think it's just been really being at the events, and also that we've had returning young folk who have kind of came to the launch day or came to one event in the region and then really wanted to come to another one. That's really what's kind of evidenced it for me, that people are really engaging.
I would say that we know that we're doing well with the project if you get a young person turning up and then they come the next day with their family or their friends, and doing that repeat visit and repeat communications is really good evidence to that you're sort of inspiring and interesting to them. So that's one way. When you do get funding for things and you are asked to evaluate in a certain way to respond to that funding, and sometimes it feels annoying, but it's also useful occasionally to have a sort of framework through which you are trying to gather that information, so that you are in a way forced to notice what whether you're reaching hearts and minds or not. And reporting on that, it can be useful to the funders in terms of their design of future programs, I think. But I agree with you, Rachel. Having a fun time on site and actually having meaningful conversations and exchanges is the best. Right, we have quite a lot of chat still going on. I don't know whether anybody has been looking at it. I haven't been looking at it then while I was talking.
So Jane says that when they have their young people visit them, they ask them to score 0 to 10 how they're feeling about their coming week, and then the same at the end of the week. And that can open up some lovely discussions about nerves and feeling unable to be in a new place outside of their comfort zone, and their scores are so much higher when they leave. And I think we will have all come across ways of doing that without a sort of tick box sheet, 0 to 10 necessarily, but on a more of a creative way of joining in with that, which is always interesting to see. We did have a question, Naomi, about that initial, where was it? It's coming. The chat is coming in so fast, as you say, that it's brilliant. Noel says making the first connection came up frequently in the presentations. What strategies should we use more in getting first steps started? And just to add on from that, there are a couple of people in the chat then saying that they've been inspired by today and would really like to get more involved. So, things like this could be one of those first steps, not necessarily for the young people, but for a wider audience.
Frankie, do you want to talk to first steps, and then maybe I'll have a go?
First steps, yeah. I was just getting lost in all these comments, and my brain was like, I think that, I don't know, in my experience is just do something and people will. It's more of an issue of someone mentioned that they get requests for interns or whatever, and they don't have the capacity to sort of take it up, but and we have that as well with RE-PEAT. It's people approach us and sometimes it's I don't have, I think the first steps are easy if you're committed to them. I don't know if that sounds like a bit of a weird answer, but I guess you have to kind of have the intention to follow up on them as well. So.
Yeah, I agree, Frankie, but I also think that when you're wondering how a project is going to be, the first steps, as you say, are just getting on with something. But also, I think for us, it's also a lot of research working out what the communities, who's involved, what other organisations are around, so that you might not necessarily be taking that first step on your own. You'd be taking the first step with 2 or 3 other organisations, and just to work out what might be most interesting to the young people you're trying to reach or engage with. So there's a bit of that too, I think.
And Art and Energy did a massive job with pulling together like so many different people and so many connections. So that was massive, I think.
Yeah, and as Rachael says, it's not always when you work in a very large number of people in a network, it's not always easy to keep all those plates spinning all the time and holding them all. And but again, that's a sort of natural process that you invite a lot of people, and naturally a few disappear and a few really strengthen, and new relationships are brought together, and then you dive in and hopefully come up with something much better, something that you might not have thought of individually. So, and treating all of life as a learning thing, that nobody's ever going to get it perfect. And so, it's cyclical. Next year, there may be some other way of working with communities in peatlands in 1 or 2 places. But it will all be based on the learning from what we've been doing up to now, up to this point. So I think that's always useful to remember. That bury the giant metaphor. It's like it's all a giant, but we take our steps, and together we're more likely to succeed, I think. Rachael, do you want to add to that?
I think I would sort of echo a bit of what Frankie was saying with the end of that. I really feel that what this project has done, that Naomi, you've really championed wholeheartedly, is like one giant first step for about, I think it's 20 something organizations all at once. Like, that's really what Peat-Fest has felt like the whole way through. And I wonder if the person who was asking questions about how to make first steps could maybe take some of this step with us. Because it really feels like so many conversations have been happening through this, that it's kind of like, oh, this feels like the beginning of something. And I feel like that's actually something that you guys as an organization just seem really good at. Is, I think you called it quiet action in your presentation, Naomi, but I think actually it's this beginning of getting people excited and getting people thinking that art and energy is like really successful at. And so maybe more, we just need to collaborate more, and then it's easier to do things together, and then as you say, dive in where it works.
Yes, and for Peat-Fest South-West, reaching young people has always worked better when we've been working with existing groups and people who are, as a first step, people who have got the door just a little bit open, and then being random and completely new and on our own, advertising something and thinking, why aren't people arriving to this? It has to start with what's there in that community, I think. Anyway, I reckon, what do you reckon, Kat? I reckon it's after 1 o'clock that we
It is, Naomi. We've perhaps reached our end, although I think we could carry on chatting for a long time all together and sharing ideas. Lots of lovely messages in the chat, and thanks so much to everyone who's still here with us. We'll find a way to connect together and carry on conversations and carry on making links, which is really important.
At the finale, I will just say something, that the finale for the Peat-Fest South-West, the sort of final celebration, is on the 22nd of November in Plymouth at the Market Hall, where there will be a big exhibition of peat and moss and the mossy carpet, and a whole host of other art and energy things. But there'll also be a 360 showing of some little film snippets, some audio. So you'll be able to collect a lot of information and ideas about Peat Festival, as well as hearing some young voices, performances, and maybe even a bit of music. So anyway, yeah, there we are. I've shared that. And at that point, I think we should finish. Do you not?
I do. I was going to say we could hear from Rachael with her rap, but maybe the rap, but maybe not. No.
Come to the finale and
Your rap
do it
for
then.
us, Rachael. Thank you. I've put a link in the chat, so a bit more information about Peat-Fest South-West. You can find out. We've actually got a couple more online broadcasts as well, Naomi, that we were going to say. So 10th of November will be a next one where we'll be coming together online, talking more about Peat-Fest and our successes and our learning. And if anyone would like to join, there's a link in the chat to our website.
Okay. Thanks very much then. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a brilliant day, the rest of your day today, and see you soon.